but I think the industry is generally excited to be moving
Yeah.
toward that direction. There is an increased interest of biomarkers. There's an increased interest of showing in cool and unique ways that formulations can do more than hydrate,
Yeah.
decrease redness.
Conceal flaws like Peter Thomas
Exactly.
Roth eyes. What's one skincare belief you think will be obsolete in 5 years?
Can we say anti-aging is not going to be a thing anymore?
I think that's fair.
So. Well, everything goes through cycles, right? But I
Yeah.
definitely think that we're currently in the cycle where people are starting to realize that that sounds ridiculous. You cannot.
Yeah,
You
I mean, I think
cannot.
that goes back to the last question, right? Like the use
Yeah.
of it probably has diminished trust in
Yeah.
consumers.
Exactly. So it's about like wanting to look as healthy as well as you can for the age and like for what you have like gone through, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome back to another episode of Demystifying Cosmetics. Today, we're unpacking one of the biggest blind spots in the beauty industry. We measure results based on what we can see, not what's actually happening biologically. And I am joined by Dr. Maria Faleeva, co-founder and CEO of CheckGen, to discuss this more. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you for having me.
Before we get into what CheckGen is, quick question. So we've trained consumers to trust their reflection, but should the mirror really be the gold standard for measuring skin health?
The way that we see our skin in the mirror is really the end product of all the biological changes that are occurring every day, every minute, responding to every type of environmental pressure that we put onto ourselves, really. So,
Yeah.
when looking at the mirror, it's important to know that these changes that you do see have actually been maybe like 2, 3 weeks in the works, with your skin just slowly starting its cellular response, and then eventually showing you the output.
Awesome. So tell me more a little bit about CheckGen and kind of how you guys are evaluating this biological skin measure.
Of course. So with CheckGen, our main goal is to really prove whether the skincare products, if they work or not. So we work with skincare brands to test their products on a molecular level. And we do this by setting up a trial. So, we get 20, 30 people to use a product, the hero product of the brand, for example. And we are able to collect superficial skin samples via a tape. So just tape an adhesive sticker to your face, take it off. And that contains quite a lot of biological data specifically related to proteins. And then we
Hmm.
can actually see with a variety of lab technologies whether these proteins are changing over time. So instead of looking at before and after photos, whether taking hydration measurements, we are actually able to take a closer look at what's happening in relation to inflammation, oxidative stress, barrier disruption, and things like that.
Awesome. So we can get more into the science behind it a little later. But I want to stay on the thought of the before and after photo and how that really is just the manifestation of what's happening underneath or at a biological level weeks to months before. And I'm curious to hear your perspective on kind of why the industry still anchors around the before and after photo idea, or the kind of like I apply it and this instantaneously happens. For instance, I just bought this Peter Thomas Roth instant eye fix, which really is just a film that tightens, and then for the 30 seconds after I put it on, I was like, oh, look at that, and then it started flaking off, and it wasn't great.
Oh,
But I think about that, and also when you're prescribed from a dermatologist something that, you have melasma, let's say, and they're
Mm,
like, well, you're not going to see results until, 3 months of use, maybe more. And that seems, you're like, great, I'll do that. But if a cosmetic product says that, there's something inherently with consumers that we say, no, 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 it needs to happen,
mm.
much sooner. So kind of what have you seen in starting to evaluate cosmetic products, kind of how they perform, and how that may be reshaping how the consumer industry thinks about, um, let's say, well aging or anti aging or measures of
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah, of course. So I think a lot of it comes down to marketing.
Yeah.
As with any direct to consumer product, you want to make
Yeah.
your formula to be bright and flashy and very appealing, and that's why I think a lot of chemists then focus on the smell or lack of smell, the texture, everything like that. However, when we start to actually look at how quickly skincare products can work, it is not going to be instantaneous. It's not going to
Yeah.
be within the first week or so. But what we do see is that it typically takes around 30 days for a product to start working on the molecular level.
Mm,
And so
okay.
if we equate, fixing fine lines, texture, it's going to be longer than these 30 days. I
Yeah.
think with the overall history of cosmetics and the way that it's, for example, even regulated in different countries, it's always claimed as it's superficial, and so there needs to not work at all, or it needs to work instantly. Whilst
Yeah.
medicine and actual therapeutic treatments, everyone accepts that it's going to be a long time because they know that fixing health takes a while. And I think
Yeah.
that there is this disconnect between understanding that cosmetic products actually do have the ability to work and improve skin health. But
Yeah. We're just not allowed to say
mm,
it.
exactly. Which is wild, like when you look at the ingredients, for example, they're still using the same types of actives, just maybe a bit below what is
Yeah.
regulated. So,
Yeah. And when you started CheckGen, what do you think your approach or technology does differently than maybe what fundamentally has been done before? So I know you talked about protein, so proteomics is conducted. And so talk a little bit about what the industry has done as kind of a standard or a baseline previously, and then what you saw to be a maybe better way of looking at results.
mhm. The current standard that's accepted within the industry is well, before and after photos. I
Hmm.
mean, these are getting a little bit more advanced with the implementation of tools like Visio or Observe that are taking photos in a more like regulated manner. Then we have our segment of before and after surveys. So that's when skincare companies will ship their products to individuals and ask them to use it for a certain amount of time and then respond how they feel in regards to it. And
Mm.
this is customer surveys are always nice, they're informative, but frequently the issue is that these questions are posed in a guided way. So the
Oh,
customer
totally. Yeah.
won't
Yeah.
necessarily doesn't have the free will to be like, nah, this
Yes.
actually didn't improve my wrinkles. It's like, yeah, well, maybe it did. Maybe I do feel hydration. And then they say like 100% of women feel more hydrated.
Yeah.
Um, and then finally, the most intense testing that I guess is done by lots of companies is when we're taking surface level measurements of the skin.
Mm.
And so this is going to be with devices like chronometers that are going to be testing the different hydration levels of the skin, which is good if you are testing a purely hydrational product. And that is where you should probably stop because that will
Yeah.
give you the answer that you can make appropriate claims.
Yeah.
Um, what I started to find with looking into this industry more, there is this shift of just being a purely cosmetic product to being something that affects suddenly anti-aging, longevity, and the industry was bringing in all of these biological buzzwords and applying
Yeah.
them in their marketing.
Yep.
Looking into it, you don't actually see a lot of brands doing testing like this.
Yeah.
So with my background knowledge working in biomedical sciences, I was like, oh, there is actually these tools that can help with this. It's just
Yeah.
stuck in labs for cardiovascular research, for cancer research, and no one's actually
Mm.
applying it in the world of cosmetic skin health.
Awesome. And so, would you say, based on your approach, that what you're looking at is more about how cells age and less about the physical transformation of the skin?
Exactly. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, our skin is all comprised with cells and the extracellular like matrix that they form around it.
Yeah.
And so, what we do is that we're able to kind of look at the proteins that these cells are expressing, and by
Hmm.
comparing it before and after, we can actually see is the environment that the cells are in, is it getting better? Are the cells getting healthier? Or are they not? Are they staying the same?
Yeah.
Which is, a result in itself.
Yeah. And so, let's dig into anti aging. It's just such a weird concept to me. I remember visiting, I think it was, oh God, maybe L'Oreal, one of the larger cosmetic companies that has, a lot of these visual devices. And they had the one that could show how much, like, photo or sun damage your skin had undergone. And I was like, oh, that'd be cool. And the woman that, runs it was like, no, no, no. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so I was kind of always under the belief, like, okay, I don't want to know how much damage my skin
Mm,
has endured, because that's it, right? Like,
yeah,
I
that's
just need to maintain what integrity it has left, apparently.
it's terrible to
And
look at those. Like, I
yeah,
once did it, and you're horrified. And it's great
yeah.
because you're like, "I will pay any amount of money I can to remove or to
Right, yeah. Getting,
yes."
like, those full body suits where are that for UV protection and things, but,
Yeah.
but you mentioned, products not necessarily you seeing, them working until, like, about 30 days. When we say work, what exactly does that mean, and how does that relate to, I guess, these concepts of anti-aging, which I think is obvious? It's not aging to longevity, which is common, like well aging to reverse aging.
Mm. It's a tricky one because when I say work, I mean we see significant changes in the protein composition, which isn't a
Okay.
very sexy marketing term to really put.
Yeah.
That's not going to get the
Okay.
crowd wild, or drive your purchases up, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. We make it different. Like,
yeah, exactly. But what I mean is that within, for example, if we are to talk about retinol, which is the
yeah.
most well accepted form of like, if you want to anti age, you use retinol. And so
Yeah.
with retinol, what happens is that you see this big increase in cellular turnover. So your cells
Mm,
are starting to expedite their life cycle. I guess they start to travel up quicker to the surface, like your
mm,
your skin barrier is turning over quicker, and so
sure.
technically the cells that are at the surface of your skin are younger.
Yeah.
And that is the changes that are happening within the first 30 days. What's interesting, and it kind of plays into the idea of really thinking about tailoring your routine, is that after 30 days, your skin gets acclimatized to whatever strong active that you are putting in.
Ooh.
And what happens
Okay.
is that you kind of get this plateau and maintenance
Yeah.
of the benefits that you have acquired within the first 30 days. So
Okay.
it's also, and it's something that you can't really see by doing these
Sure.
tests, just by looking at people and before and after photos. It's really understanding that the big changes are going to happen probably early on, and then it's
Yeah.
all about figuring out whether you want to maintain it, whether you want to give your skin, for example, a rest,
Yeah.
so it can stop for a little bit and then pick it back up.
Sure.
It's but we don't know enough about what every single active in
Yeah.
different formulations does on the skin. So it's hard to say.
Yeah, and I guess it's also compounded by the fact that there's other, a retinol cream has a lot of other things, some that may help it deliver it deeper into the skin layers to even, impede actually penetration into areas that it needs to go. When you see the I guess, benefit that reaches, I guess, peak, and then it's more about maintenance. If you were to remove that from your skincare routine, do you then see the decline back to the original state that the skin was in prior to using the product?
The experiments that we do for brands, understandably, they don't they
They don't want to know that
that
part.
doesn't
Yeah.
cover
Yeah,
the
it doesn't have
actual,
to be brand specific. Let's say in
but, like,
academia when you were
hypothetically.
researching, yeah,
Yeah.
or
I mean,
hypothetically.
exactly. I mean, cells, and that's something that I was really working on in my PhD. Cells respond incredibly well to their extracellular environment, especially if they are young. There's this whole network of how a cell is able to understand what it surrounds it,
Yeah.
and it sends these like signals up into its DNA, and then the DNA is actually able to respond directly what's outside of it. So if you
Yeah.
do like an experiment where you put a young cell into a healthy extracellular environment, it's going to be pretty happy. You put it into a
Yeah.
bad one, it's going to start, you know, displaying increased levels of inflammation. It's
Mm,
going to start adopting a different shape. But then if you take it back off, put it back into where it's supposed to be, it's going to be happy again.
yeah.
So I guess that is a very long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's really interesting. And I know we discussed this a little bit when we chatted a couple of weeks ago. But are there any elements to the young cell that either research or you've come across that is the reason why that happens, right? So is there a way to harness that concept without extracting young cells? Like, it seems like a crazy, nightmare that I feel like I saw on some series where it's like, oh, we put, children's blood on our skin. Is
Yeah.
there a way to harness young cells, right? That concept, either tricking our biology into thinking that there is, young cells present to influence that extracellular matrix. Do we have the sophistication in science yet to identify what exactly that indicator is, or is it just so complex that there's probably multiple ways that it's influencing the cells around it?
It's definitely multiple ways. And I mean, if you look at research, or even if you look at some skincare brands that have tried to tackle this, everyone picks the one element that they want to focus on and they go for it. So, for
Yeah.
example, the in research, stiffness, where the cell is sitting, can really affect whether the cell is going to age faster or slower.
Hmm.
The composition of what it's sitting on. So, for example, if there is, and I'm going to bring up collagen, the big buzzword in
Yeah, yeah.
skincare. Um, the There's many different types of collagen, right? So, for example, if you have kind of like not very well formed collagen, it's more stiff than expected. The cells are not going to like it. Whereas if you put it on like nice, fresh, like well functioning collagen.
Yeah.
And then, of course, it's the things that happen within the cell itself, right? And it's kind of like a chicken or the egg, what prompted these changes. But you can start to look at the different like proteins within the
Yeah.
cell that are actually going to be regulating how the cell is functioning, right? And there's like lots of desire. Well, there's lots of research, for example, going into trying to remove, for example, senescent cells from the environment,
Mm,
because we're like the really old cells that are just sitting there, not dying, but causing havoc with signaling around it.
yeah. Interesting. Okay. Another very interesting tangent that I want to go into, also based on a conversation we had previously, was about the effects of products when you're doing these interventional evaluations. I call them interventional because you're basically asking people to use something different, right? That you mentioned people with more compromised skin, or let's say those that have active lifestyles with lots of UV exposure, actually respond less. The delta, right, the change that you
Mm.
see is often less prevalent in those that have higher degrees of exposure. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. That was a really interesting insight that we started to see, right?
Yeah.
Um, the and the way that I think about it is the fact that your skin your skin's always reacting to the environment that you put around to it, and it has many different functions, right? It has a function to absorb stuff, it has a function to defend your body against everything that's like the good stuff comes in, the bad stuff doesn't come in.
Yeah.
And it's when it's compromised with excess UV damage, it's actually not able to really focus on doing all this good stuff
Mm.
very well. And
Mm.
when we are, for example, putting a product on and we are not paying attention to necessary UV protection, that product doesn't have the ability to act in the best way for your skin, because your skin's just being overly stimulated, like it's being
Yeah.
overly, it's doing too much all at once.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I kind of think of that as when we talked about it, like almost like the concept of being bacteriostatic, right? Where the bacteria is just trying to survive. It's not looking to, reproduce. It's not looking to, have anything other than like living now. And so it kind of reminded me of that concept where it's like your skin's just trying to exist and it doesn't have time for the ancillary things like improving itself.
Exactly. Right. Like if the
Yeah.
main goal is to protect itself, it doesn't really care, like, oh, okay, like the hydration, it's fine. Like
Yeah.
not the number one concern. But
Yeah.
it does play into the interesting fact of like if brands were doing these tests and were able to educate their clients and customers about this stuff, maybe more people would find benefit with skincare
Yeah.
products. And two, I think the brands would be able to get massive loyalty points because they're
Yeah.
actually being honest about like, look, this is what we can do, but you need to take this part of responsibility forwards.
Sure.
Okay, real quick. Raise your hand if you have dealt with active instability. If you have ever opened a jar of retinol cream and smelt an off odor, or noticed your formula went dark brown, chances are you are dealing with active instability. It's never fun when the formula you've been working on goes south and the due date is only days away. That's why we've encapsulated the trickier ingredients to work with so you can kick the stability struggle to the curb. From retinol to vitamin C, we make it easier to work with those ingredients that typically give you that 3 p.m. headache. The cellulose shell shields the active from outside exposure. Things like air and light that are likely to cause active breakdown, giving you the power to create stable and effective formulas without the trial and error. Ready to quickly create effective skincare formulas? Discover Tagra's Cellucaps line by going to tagra.com/cellucaps. So, have you encapsulated yet? Now back to the show.
So combining, so brands out there, listen to the combined benefit approach. But in thinking about, when you're evaluating these products and also in your research, is there a hierarchy that you have seen in terms of because again, talking about this combined effort where it's like, all right, your skin, if it's being inundated with a lot of inputs and kind of at, it's really not able to utilize things efficiently. Is there kind of a tiered hierarchy of things that you'd want to see? Like, for instance, I know a lot of brands focus on hydration, right? So like first and foremost, you need to have this like hydration. And then it becomes like second, we'll do this. Is there in your mind a kind of hierarchy of strategies that you could recommend or you've seen be effective in terms of seeing the most benefit for topical products?
Hydration is definitely up there because also you
Okay.
can instantly visibly see the results, right? Because the
Sure.
kind of moisture kind of gets trapped and then your skin looks better. On a molecular level, a thing that we also see responding really fast is relation to inflammation. So
Mm,
your inflammatory markers are very volatile. And you
mm,
can see this, for example, like even with like allergies, right? So you get
yeah.
really red and then you stop getting really red. And those are one of the first markers that we see undergoing a change with effective products.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to kind of think about how inflammation doesn't always need to be visible. You
Yeah.
can always have like underlying levels of inflammation that are going to not be beneficial for your skin or for your skin cells, but always kind of prioritizing, I guess, like anti-redness, calming, soothing effects might be a fast and easy way to get
Yeah.
skin health back.
Interesting. So inflammation, I think, to me somehow, not somehow, kind of relates to sensitive skin. And
Mm,
and I think I've seen lots of articles that claim, an increase in skin sensitivity. It's self-perceived, which we know is kind of a flawed
mm,
self-perception versus the reality. But why do you think that there maybe is an increase in inflammation and sensitive skin, more so than you know, historically past?
mm. I think increase in sensitivity happens when you damage your skin barrier. And damage
Mm,
of the skin barrier can frequently occur when you're using, I mean, people with sensitive skin have sensitive skin, but you can also give yourself sensitive skin from over product use. And that's
mm.
something that, for example, I have done myself.
Oh, yeah.
Many times previously, where I get very excited about all the different things that are coming out, and then you start to apply them. Everything, you give yourself the like 10-step skin routine where
Oh,
it's
yeah. Oh, yeah.
adding everything and anything, and that is just really not going to be beneficial. It's actually just
Yeah,
going to give your skin so much stress, and then you're going to have to really pull it back,
sure.
and start using basic products again. Yeah, it's important to just try to understand like what your skin actually needs. I mean, it's a
Mhm.
very difficult thing to understand and actually look at, but it's something that we're trying to uncover with CheckGen, of like looking at people's actual biomarkers and understand like whether they have something that's outstanding. Like, do they have heightened levels of inflammatory markers? Do they have
Yeah.
heightened or really low levels of proteins that are focusing on oxidative protection? And then kind of using these results to guide um, customers' decisions, choices.
Awesome. I
Mm.
love that. And I had reached out to you pretty just randomly because you had posted something on LinkedIn. And what I feel is that this area of the industry is a lot of voices that are rising to the top are more in line with brand development and marketing, right?
Mm.
And so, what I appreciated about kind of the approach that you were taking, and a lot of what you talk about on professional platforms like LinkedIn, is kind of how your academic training has really informed your approach to evaluating products, and kind of the mission you just mentioned, which you may not see as a mission, but like to
Mm.
reinform brands, right, in terms of how best to provide products to customers. And so I'm interested to hear if there is anything that you've observed lacking that you've gained in your academic training that you think cosmetic science and the industry overlooks, and what areas of overlap we could start to maybe create better depth around.
Mm. My academic training definitely made me very specific on what claims are. I
Yeah.
think that is to be a given. I don't think that the same level of rigor as is applied in like research of like leukemia needs to be given into something that's
Yeah.
cosmetic science. But I think the general vibe does need to start moving that way. And I think what's interesting is the fact that there are so more and more people from academia are starting to understand that you can actually like take this type of research and start to apply it in
More
cosmetic
broadly.
science.
Yeah.
And for example, brands do really really interesting stuff when they're actually starting to explore how their products are working, why they're working, because that is not just for marketing, that's also for um, making your future products better,
Yeah.
not just relying on the chemistry for that. I think but I think the industry is generally excited to be moving
Yeah.
towards that direction. There is an increased interest of biomarkers. There's an increased interest of showing in cool and unique ways that formulations can do more than hydrate, decrease redness,
conceal flaws like Peter Thomas
exactly.
Roth eyes. It's so interesting too to hear, when you're speaking about some of the mechanisms that you can observe, but how we really haven't elucidated, exact pathways yet. It's so interesting because it's like it's our skin. We've been on Earth for how long, and yet we're still like we don't know how it works. It's like the deep ocean. We're not sure. So in our last few minutes, we'll do some quick takeaways, and maybe this is more of a summary and overlap of what we talked about. But for consumers, how should they rethink whether a product is working or not?
Oh, definitely use it more than 2 weeks. So when I work with brands, a really good way that R&D, the head of R&D had put it to me once is like, we run our trials for 3 months because our bottle lasts typically 3 months. And so essentially, like, if you use the entire thing, you will get the claims that we are putting forward to you. And buy it, use it if your skin reacts well to it, or if you don't break out, if you're happy with the smell, the texture, you like it, just use it to the end, and then actually think like, do I look better? Do I look different than what I did 2-3 months ago? Not like, don't look at the microscopic differences. Skincare is supposed to maintain. It's not going to produce huge visible changes. For that, you need to go to the cosmetics office and do laser treatments.
It's not going to stop time. And then if you do go the route of cosmetic interventions or aesthetic interventions, you're maybe at one point going to look like you did cosmetic interventions.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong. Like, everyone just picks what they need, but like, to get the expectations of skincare.
Yeah, you're not. Yeah. All right. Awesome. And then for formulators, what's one biological concept they need to better understand, or that they should better understand?
Okay. So it's something that I'm so interested in myself. A lot of the way that formulas occur now is that there is they pick and choose actives that are developed by manufacturers who have done ingredient testing. So they have grown cells in a dish and they've added the active, and then they've seen like whether those fibroblasts have increase in collagen or different stuff like that. When you think about biology, if you add one thing to cells, they will respond one way. If you add 2 things to the cells, they might respond in a completely different way. So it's thinking about how the synergy of compounds might bring out completely new, good, and unexpected results that you're just not going to know before testing it. So definitely to think about this synergy of cellular biology.
Awesome. And then for brands, what's one thing they should stop doing or one thing they should start doing?
I think for brands to start to educate customers more. And it's definitely, customer trust is definitely decreasing. In relation to skincare brands, when I speak to just consumers, there's this overarching belief that skincare brands are somehow trying to lie to you and trying to deceive you, even though it's completely not true, and everyone's just trying to do the best with what they have.
Sure.
But customers have now gotten accustomed to understanding what ingredients do. And I think the next kind of wave of customer education is going to be, how does this actually impact my skin health? And people are going to start to understand, like, okay, like, what does inflammation actually mean? What does like cellular aging actually imply? And the brands that are able to actually talk people through this, whether it's through social media, whether it's through educating floor staff, are the ones that are going to get better client retention, better happy customers.
Awesome. I love that. And then final question, what's one skincare belief you think will be obsolete in 5 years?
can we say anti-aging is not going to be a thing anymore?
I think that's fair.
I think so. I think, well, everything goes through cycles, right? But I
Yeah.
definitely think that we're currently in the cycle where people are starting to realize that that sounds ridiculous.
Yeah.
You
I mean, I think
cannot,
that goes back to the last question, right? Like the use
yeah,
of it probably has diminished trust in
yeah,
consumers.
exactly. So it's about like wanting to look as healthy as well as you can for the age and like for what you have like gone through, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that.
Awesome. 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 All right. Well, this was a great conversation. Thank you again for so much of your time. Where can people find CheckGen if they're interested in checking it out?
Of course, well, we have our website, so www.checkgen.com.au, because we're based in Australia, but we do work with international brands from all around. Alternatively, you can find me on LinkedIn with Maria Faleeva.
Awesome. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.